Alright, greetings everybody. Welcome to Learning Objective 2 for World War One. So, here we're going to discuss some American attitudes and actions, and show how such attitudes and actions eventually led the United States to enter into World War One. So, from the outbreak of World War One, American public opinion predominantly favored the Allies. It matters little how much of this opinion was due to Allied propaganda, since both sides issued propaganda. Although the Allies had an advantage in issuing propaganda, they spoke the same language as the Americans, English. The Allies controlled the most important avenues of communication, as they had access to American news and journals, and could command the services of many intellectuals and leaders of American society. Ties of language and literature, law and custom bound America to the British Empire in 100 ways and more. War with Britain would appear immoral to many Americans. With France, our relations were more sentimental than intimate, but traditions of Franco-American friendship went back all the way to the American Revolution. With Germany and its allies, American relations were friendly, but not cordial in many ways, and even formal. However, in 1910, the United States had a population of 92 million, with 32 million being hyphenated Americans, first or second generation immigrants, who retained ties to the old country. Among the more than 13 million from the countries at war, by far the largest were German Americans, and 4 million Irish Americans who harbored deep-rooted animosity of Britain. These groups instinctively leaned towards the Central Powers. Since the Spanish-American War, they had grown up in America a feeling that the German government was militaristic, hostile to democracy, and unfriendly to the United States. This seemed particularly true after the release of the Zimmermann telegram on January 13th, 1917. Germany announced it would resume unrestricted submarine warfare. Neutral ships, armed or unarmed, sailing into German war zone would attack without warning. Consequently, Wilson broke off diplomatic relations with Germany on February 3rd. The German foreign minister, Alfred Zimmermann, foresaw the war with the United States. And he saw that it was inevitable. He sent a telegram instructing his ambassador in Mexico to offer an alliance and financial aid to Mexico in case of war between the United States and Germany. In return for diversionary action against the United States, Mexico would receive the lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona that it lost during the Mexican-American War of 1848. The Zimmermann note was intercepted by the British Secret Service and held on to until the most propitious moment in order to push Wilson over the brink and into war with Germany. Wilson's severing diplomatic relations with Germany seemed to present that moment. The contents of the note constitute one of the most important factors in leading Wilson to declare war on Germany. On March 1st, the Zimmermann note was released to the public, which became electrified by its contents. So on March 1st, the Zimmermann note was released to the public, which really upset everybody, and war was looming. As already mentioned, American opinion was further aroused by Germany's persistence in its U-boat policy, submarine warfare, which most Americans regarded as a violation of international law and of morality. Finally, at the outset of war, Germany had made a serious blunder when it invaded Belgium. So according to the treaty signed by most European powers, Belgium's neutrality was guaranteed way back in 1839. The German Chancellor justified Germany's actions by calling it the treaty, a scrap of paper. So the same mistake was compounded when the same official justified the German invasion of Belgium in the Reichstag, saying, We are now on the defensive. Necessity knows no law. We shall try to make good the good we have thus committed as soon as we shall have reached our military goal. Those who, like ourselves, are fighting for the highest aims can only think of one thing, that they must smash their way through. By such frank and candid acknowledgement that its acts defied international law, Germany put itself morally in the wrong as breaker of treaties and a position that lost its support and sympathy all over the world. The structure of the Treaty of Versailles, as we'll look at later, rested in large part on the war guilt of Germany. When the treaty was first written, scholars and laymen alike in the Allied nations sincerely believed that Germany was completely responsible for the war. And this is going to have far-reaching consequences because laying the guilt of the entire war at Germany's feet is going to lead directly to World War II, and we'll talk about that later. The United States also developed an economic stake in the war. Even before 1914, a large part of American trade had been with Allied nations. During the war, trade with Germany became almost non-existent, while trade with Great Britain and France mounted impressively. This increase in foreign trade was in full swing by the middle of 1915 and rescued the United States from a commercial depression that had lasted a year. Thus, within a year after the outbreak of the war, the whole fabric of American economic life was so closely interwoven with the economy of the Allies that any rupture would have been ruinous to the United States economy. So between 1914 and 1916, our trade with the Allied countries went from $825 million to $3.214 billion. So the problem with this is that the United States was officially a neutral party with the conflict within Europe. But as this trade indicates, and from Germany's perspective, the United States was anything but neutral. And so this is where we're going to see a lot of the U-boat attacks, and this is going to precipitate the Zimmerman telegram to be sent. And so Germany, from its perspective, felt justified in its aggression towards American passenger ships and to the United States in general. All right, that concludes Learning Objective 2. I will see you in Learning Objective 3. Take care.